Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti Alayhi Rahma was born in the year 536 AH in Sijistan, Iran as the son of Khwaja Ghyasuddin Chishti, who was a very pious and influential man. He was a direct descendant through both his parents, of Hazrat Ali, R.A. His birth was a time of chaos and great upheavals in both India and the Muslim Empire as a whole, and so he was orphaned at the tender age of 14, thus raised in the same condition as Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. But soon there reached a point where social evils, moral degradations and personal tragedy stirred something deep within his young mind, and he began to turn towards the spiritual life. Once when watering his father's garden, he came across a dervish, Hazrat Ibrahim Kanduzi, R.A. He was deeply affected by the saint's holy manner, and Hazrat Ibrahim Kanduzi, R.A.'s presence transformed Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A.'s inner being. His eyes were opened to the ultimate realities of the spiritual world, and so he began his spiritual journey by renouncing all material things. He sold his father's garden, all his possessions, and distributed the money amongst the poor. Still at a young age, he arrived at the great centers of learning in Samarkand and Bukhara, Uzbekistan, where he swiftly became a hafiz and distinguished alim. But still unsatisfied with this, he began a strict regime of prayers, meditations, fasting and self-renunciation which continued for years and grew more intense and vigorous until Allah granted him the exalted rank of sainthood. He used to fast for 7 days and nights, breaking fast on the 8th with a small crust of bread soaked in water. At this point, he felt the need for a sheikh, or spiritual guide, feeling the truth of the Quranic injunction, O ye who believe, be mindful of your duty towards Allah, and seek a means of approach unto him, and strive in his way in order that ye may succeed. 535. He himself used to state, success is not possible without a guide. He traveled extensively throughout the Near East, and finally found a spiritual guide in Hazrat Khwaja Uthman Haryuni, R.A. In the 20 years he spent under his murshid, spiritual leader's guidance, he attained perfection in Tasawwuf and was awarded the Khilafat-e-Azam by Khwaja Uthman, R.A. He offered many pilgrimages both with his murshid and alone. It was during one of these, while in Medina Sharif, that he was directed spiritually by Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, to go to India and spread Islam there. Once, in Medina Sharif, Hazrat Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., was paying his respects at the darbar of Sayyiduna Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him. While he was doing so, a voice was heard saying, Wa alaikum as-salam ya kutbul mashayikhi barobar, peace be upon you also, O the head of the pious of the earth and the sea. On hearing this, his murshid said to him, Now indeed you have reached perfection. After a full 20 years of hard training in Islamic mysticism under his great murshid, Hazrat Khwaja Moinuddin, R.A., was bestowed with Khilafat in the Chistiya Silsila. His murshid, after advising him, handed over his Asa Mubarak, sacred staff, wooden sandals and muzala, prayer mat, to Hazrat Khwaja Moinuddin, R.A., saying that those tabarakat, relics, had come down from Sayyiduna Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, in succession. Then in 583 A.H., when he was absorbed in prayer at the Holy Kaaba, he heard a voice saying, O Moinuddin, we are greatly pleased with you, you have been given salvation, ask for anything that you may like. He submitted respectfully, O Allah, give salvation to the followers and disciples of Moinuddin. A reply was heard, O Moinuddin, you are accepted by us. I will give salvation to your followers and disciples and also to those who may enter your fold till the day of Qiyamat. After performing the Hajj, he was divinely inspired from Medina Sharif to go to Ajmer, India, to preach Islam. Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, commanded him, O Moinuddin, you are the helper of my religion. I entrust to you the country of Hindustan, India. Proceed to Ajmer and spread the light of truth. Not knowing where Ajmer was situated, the Holy Prophet, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, appeared in Hazrat Khwaja Sahib, R.A.'s dream and showed him where the city of Ajmer was situated. Along the way, he stopped in several places including Baghdad, Isfahan and Balkh. In Baghdad Sharif, he was the guest of Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, R.A., the king of all saints and founder of the Qadriya Silsila. Hazrat Ghaus-ul-Azam, R.A., organized a qawwali in his own house for the visitors, and he himself stood outside that night, with eyes closed and his staff tightly held against the ground. When asked the reason for this, he replied, I needed to stop the ground shaking, such was the power of Khwaja's wad. Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., and his disciples were in a cave in the mountains of the Hindu Kush when one of the most famous events in Sufi history occurred. Hundreds of miles away, in Baghdad Sharif, Sheikh Abdul Qadir Jilani, R.A., pronounced his chieftainship of all Awliya Allah by saying, "My foot is on the neck of all Walis." Spiritually hearing the great saint's statement, Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., immediately threw himself down and pressed his neck against the floor, signifying his submission to that truth. It was because of this type of humble obedience that Allah granted him the title, Sultan-e-Hind, for he is the leader and spiritual head to all the hundreds of Walis that have blessed India in aftertimes. Indeed, it was that Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., who arrived in India at a time of tremendous upheaval and moral decay. The Ghaznavi dynasty was in its last steps, and the Rajput kings were gaining power. Tyrannical rulers were making life unbearable for common people, especially the Muslims whose numbers were diminishing day by day. Yet India is not named the land of saints and Sufis for just any reason. Its people had inherited a wealth of spirituality that yearned for expression. It was into such an arena that Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., stepped, a torch to India's tinder. First he went to Lahore, a center of learning where resided a great number of Muslim theologians, philosophers and Sufis. Yet he soon left this place, for his divinely guided mission was not to men such as these, but rather to those who were deprived of the light of Islam. Thus he arrived in Delhi, which was to become the seat of his most famous successors. At the time, the city was a place of much fear and mutual hatred between Hindus and Muslims, but Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., began delivering his sermons in a soft and sweet tone. As a result of this kindness and forbearance, both Hindus and Muslims were turned towards the path of truth. The great Wali was revered and loved by those of both religions, a trend which was to be the hallmark of Sufism in India. Soon, however, he left Delhi too, heading instead for the remote city of Ajmer by the command of Rasulallah, peace and blessings of Allah be upon him, deep within the kingdom of the most powerful Rajput prince in northern India, Raj Prithviraj. This city was completely alien to Islam. No Muslims at all lived within its bounds. It was in this hostile environment that Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., and his 40 disciples settled and began the bulk of his teaching. Very soon, however, he changed the entire civic atmosphere, gathering people of all races, castes and stations to the shining truth of Islam. His high morals and frugal lifestyle deeply impressed the Hindus, and all the while, the beautiful messages of the Quran and Sunnah entered deep into their hearts. Soon they started to convert, multitudes upon multitudes, and the prince became alarmed as even his courtiers and high-ranking servants took up Islam. It is interesting here to note that the prince's mother had predicted the arrival of Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., and had warned her son not to interfere with Khwaja Sahib, R.A., lest he suffer total destruction. Whether Raj Prithviraj forgot this prophecy or ignored it is unknown, but he began to harass the sheikh and trouble his followers. But Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., holding firm to the Islamic doctrine that Allah is with those who patiently persevere, steadfastly carried on his peaceful mission. One day, however, he said, the prince will be captured alive, and his kingdom snatched away. This prophecy was proven true not long after. The prince was defeated by Sultan Shahabuddin, captured alive and brought into the presence of the Sultan, who ordered him executed. The power of the Rajputs was thus broken for more than 300 years. Khwaja Moinuddin Chishti, R.A., carried on his work in Ajmer for 45 years, and millions entered Islam through his spiritual light and endeavors. Besides this great service, he also established permanent Sufi centers which were run by such mighty disciples as Khwaja Qutbuddin Kaki, Hazrat Nizamuddin Aliya, Hazrat Baba Farid Gand Shakar and Khwaja Naziruddin Chirag Delhoy, R.A. On the 29th Jamada Sani, before entering his bare cell for his usual meditations, he advised his attendants that he should not be disturbed. When his Khalifa-e-Azam, Khwaja Qutbuddin Kaki, R.A., arrived from Delhi on the 6th Rajab, 633 AH, he found no answer to his polite knocking. Then the Murids unhinged the door and there they found that their beloved Murshid had already left the world, at the ripe age of 96. To the wonder and amazement of all, upon his forehead was inscribed letters of light which said, "He was the beloved of Allah, and he died in the love of Allah." Allama Hassan Raza Khan Barelwi, the brother of Allah Hazrat, wrote the following memorable verse in relation to Sultan ul-Hind, Khwaja Gharib Nawaz.